Are you asking yourself, why is my morning number creeping up when I'm doing everything right? So if you're in your 40s and noticing this, you're not imagining it. Nothing changed in your routine. You're eating the same, dosing the same, going to bed at the same time, and still waking up higher than ever. That's usually the moment self-doubt starts to creep in. What am I doing wrong, right? What am I missing? You're not. Midlife hormones shift insulin sensitivity in very specific, predictable ways, and fasting glucose is often the first place this shows up. So today, I want to walk you through what's actually happening in your body and what you can do about it. Because this isn't failure, this is actual stuff that's happening. So when it makes sense, it's a little easier to swallow, isn't it? Well, I am glad you're here today. Welcome to the show. And hormonal shift. Let's start with what's changing under the surface. Estrogen decline. And this is not always the first hormone that falls, but it does impact your sleep. So we're going to start there. It plays a big role in our insulin sensitivity. It needs to be talked about enough. And I'm definitely bringing this topic to my book. So you can definitely check and grab yourself a copy of Highs, Lows, and Hormones. You can see the link right here in the show notes. Lots great information, useful tools in the book. So as it starts to fluctuate and decline in perimenopause, your cells don't respond to insulin as efficiently as it once did. So if you're taking the same basal insulin, your body may need more to do the same job, even overnight. This is subtle at first, thank goodness, right? So it's not like falling off a cliff for most of us women, but it often shows up as slightly higher fasting numbers before anything else typically changes. Another thing happening is that other hormone, progesterone. It fluctuates. So progesterone can increase insulin resistance. Not a lot of talk about this, but it's very, very notable, and it is a proven thing that does happen. So especially in the second half of your cycle, when progesterone naturally increases. So that is part of that physiological happening, especially in the second half of your cycle. Not available to lower HRV. So this is a topic we talk a lot about here on the show, that heart rate variability. We're getting more and more information about how important this measuring of the sympathetic nervous system, which is the stress response. And we know how much stress impacts blood sugar, but this is all tied together, which will point sugars up early in the morning. So again, if our progesterone is fluctuating or on the lower end or the higher end, it's going to impact our body's response to sleep, because the body likes to be in a calm state. So high or low progesterone, depending on the time of cycle, is going to impact stress and cortisol and ultimately your blood sugar. So you may notice some weeks your mornings look fine, and I'm going to paint a picture here for this. Other weeks they're higher for no clear reason. Make paying attention and keeping track of all this another thing we do in the book, and really do encourage you to be doing with a lot of the resources and the added things that I have in there to help you and guide you with this. But this is not inconsistency. It's hormonal. Cortisol overnight. So let's talk about that. So cortisol naturally rises in the early morning hours, even when we were 20 and everything was feeling good with our hormones and on track. So it does in the early morning hours to wake us up. So that is a natural thing that's happening. In midlife, this response can be very exaggerated, especially if you're stressed or not sleeping well. So there's when we see the vicious cycle. So we're not sleeping well, right? It's terrible. And then we have the compounded effects of what hormones are making us feel and that experience, plus the blood sugar variability. So there's a lot going on. Cortisol tells your liver to release glucose. More cortisol equals more glucose dumped into your bloodstream before you wake up. Again, it's that protective thing, trying to make sure that we're up and we will be able to move and to operate in the morning. And the amplified dawn phenomenon. So this is something that we've been hearing about for years. I think it's much more awareness now that we have hormones, all these other hormones that are impacting what that looks like when we naturally rise in the morning with glucose. And then when we're adding in all these other variables, and the dawn phenomenon is definitely happening, and we're noticing this. You may have had some experience with this before. Now it's even stronger, right? So instead of a small bump, you're seeing a steady climb. So we might not just waking up 10, 15 points higher in the morning. We might be shooting up 50 or 60 points in the higher in the morning as far as our glucose levels. And it's typically between 3 and 7 a.m. too. Again, typically. Sometimes it's a little later. Again, it depends on your own sleep cycle and your circadian rhythm. And again, it's nothing you did wrong. The night before caused this. Another thing to consider is muscle loss. This is another factor. The one is often overlooked, and one that I talk about a lot because I understand. I've personally felt the difference. Many of our ladies in our type 1 and midlife circle, they feel a difference. They notice a difference when they are lifting the weights and maintaining their muscle. But as we move through our 40s, we start to lose muscle mass unless we're actively working to maintain it. Muscle is one of your biggest glucose storage sites. Again, muscle. This is where we store the most glucose. So this is something we want to keep viable and strong to help us. So what happens when you have less muscle? There's simply less place for glucose to go overnight. Weird, right? That means more of it stays circulating in your bloodstream, which shows up as a higher fasting number. And this is why two women can eat and dose the same way, but the one with more muscle mass typically often wakes up lower. So again, there's another motivator. And it's not just about food or insulin, it's also about body composition. So again, that muscle, the more muscle mass we have, it's going to overall, especially as we're aging, help blood sugar management. Sleep disruption. This is another really key factor. Now let's talk about sleep because this is a big one. During perimenopause, sleep often becomes lighter and more fragmented, right? We're waking up more. Sometimes it's harder to go to sleep. We're waking more often. Maybe we're waking up too early. So it's not a sound night's sleep anymore. So again, you might be waking up at 3 a.m., tossing and turning. Maybe you have to get up and use the bathroom. That's a very likely thing. Or you feel like you slept, but not deeply. So it was not a deep quality night of sleep. And even if you don't fully realize it, your body does. And poor sleep, again, over time, increases cortisol. So now you've got higher overnight stress, you've got the hormones, you've got more glucose release from the liver, and reduced insulin sensitivity the next morning. Combining all of that alone can raise fasting glucose. So now we're understanding why this is happening. So if your mornings are higher, it's not just about what you ate, it's also about how you slept. So again, sleep is key. So what can we do? Now let's shift out of what's wrong. And now that we maybe understand what's happening a little bit more, so what we can do to help this. So number one, lift weights. Strength training, like we just mentioned, helps rebuild and maintain muscle. More muscle equals better glucose uptake, especially overnight. This doesn't have to be extreme. Again, just staying active, even 2 to 3 sessions a week will make a difference. Number two, another way that we can mitigate what's happening with those higher blood sugars is protein at dinner. Yes, we all know that those balanced plates definitely help stabilize blood sugar, but protein helps stabilize it, especially overnight, and supports the muscle. So again, that all goes hand in hand. So we want to protect and rebuild the muscles that we're working during the day, and we also want to create that balanced plate at night to minimize the spike and the variation in blood sugar. And of course, that carries over into the whole night that you are sleeping. So if dinner is a very carb heavy without enough protein, you may see more overnight variability. And this could be something to track and keep an eye on. Notice if this is happening, make a note. And again, Recognizing what's happening is a good opportunity to shift things the next day and the next night and to see how it improves your sleep. And number three is to improve your sleep where you can. You don't need perfect sleep, but small improvements do matter. So think about consistent bedtime and wake time, lower light at night, managing late night stress, again, doing some calming, relaxing things 2 to 3 hours prior to when your goal to lay down to fall asleep is. And even a slight reduction in overnight cortisol can help morning numbers. I love the box breathing. This is something I'm personally practicing, and I'm just doing those 4 inhales, 4 exhales, doing some gentle stretching and yoga within an hour of bedtime. And again, we can do this breathing right in our bed. So these are something you can take to the bed with you just to get into that controlled and relaxed breathing patterns that again lowers the stress and helps us fall asleep. Number four is to evaluate your basal rates. This is a big one. If your fasting glucose is consistently higher, your basal insulin may simply need adjusting. Definitely talk to your care team and your doctor about this. And again, it's not because you failed, it's because your body is asking for more insulin. It's physiologically changing. Again, the hormones, which I'll get into more in just a minute, are definitely impacting your body's need for a little more insulin. So number five is to track patterns across your cycle. So again, look for the trends, not single days, because we're going to have those one-offs where in most cases we can explain why our blood sugar was higher in the morning, but just following the patterns. These are good questions to ask yourself. Are mornings higher in the second half of your cycle in that luteal phase? Do they shift week to week? When you see the pattern, it becomes much easier to respond instead of react. Again, we want those consistent, that proof consistent in order to let us know really where those shifts need to happen, whether it's in our basal rate, the protein at dinner, and stuff like that. Number six, and this really ties all this together, especially if you're in perimenopause and you are experiencing hormone changes, bringing in hormone therapy will help mitigate this. So let me explain. So progesterone it lowers during our luteal phase, and in some cases it is rising in our luteal phase. But as we're aging, the progesterone levels do fall, and it helps us fall asleep. So having progesterone at a healthy balance anytime during your cycle, if you are still cycling, or even if you're in postmenopause, having some progesterone on board is going to help mitigate that stress response. Again, we know that we want to lower stress, lower cortisol. This in reflection will help to avoid those blood sugar spikes in the early mornings. Another thing to consider is that lower estrogen. We talked about the impact of estrogen on our insulin sensitivity and our ability to utilize insulin to its best capacity. So that lower estrogen is not only does it cause awakenings, usually those 3 a.m. awakenings, waking up at 3 a.m., is the cause of low estrogen. So not only is the estrogen not on board to help us with insulin usage, but it's also causing us to wake up and to feel more stress. So you see the vicious cycle about how this does happen when these hormones are not on board and not optimized. These are signs your levels are falling, and you can add it in will help you stay asleep. Adding in hormone therapy. Talk this over with your practitioner. So a good gauge, if you're currently on, say, estrogen, I'll use that as an example, is whether or not you are waking up again with the night sweats, or if you're just awakening at 3 a.m. That is an indicator that your estrogen is low, or if you are on hormone therapy, you may need a little more, again, so that you can get back to restful nights and to avoid the middle of the night awakenings. Be sure to talk with a hormone specialist about your options. And again, it's never too early to get this on board. We want a long-term life feeling good and confident about our choices, managing a chronic disease like this. And don't put it off. Definitely a conversation to have with your doctor and to express what you're feeling, express what is happening, and any frustrations you may be feeling about your blood sugar and how your overall experience is as you're aging. It's really important to communicate this so that you can get the best help available. And so again, once again, if your morning numbers are creeping up, I want you to hear this clearly after talking through why it's happening and some clear and simple things that you can do to help. You are not doing anything wrong. Your body is changing and the hormones are changing and your insulin needs are changing along with it. So again, being aware, being conscientious of that and honoring that is really, really important. And once you understand the pattern, you can work with it instead of fighting it. Big believer in understanding the why so that we can take actionable steps, right? And this is one of the first things I break down in my book because it's often the moment women start blaming themselves. There's a lot of self-blame and just it can quickly get out of control if we don't just sit in it, talk about it, discover what is happening, and really seeking answers. And you can see exactly what's happening. That blame goes away. Trust me, I've been there and I am you. This is a really important topic, and I know it's important. And if you want to go deeper into this, you can grab Highs, Lows, and Hormones. This is a survival guide for women with diabetes from menstrual cycles to menopause. And the link is right here in the show notes to grab yourself a copy. And I hope this sat well with you and this answers some questions and it gave you some help that you need right now. And be sure to share the show and follow the show so that you can keep in touch with me and you don't miss an episode every week. And have a beautiful day. Be back in here next time.